Hello and welcome to Optimus Prime Time Pastimes, the podcast where we talk to people in the wrestling space about their passions outside of wrestling and, of course, the ongoing Energon crisis. I'm one of your hosts, Steve, along with the other host, Gav. Say hello, Gav.
Hello.
Well, buckle up. We are kicking it into overdrive in what's sure to be a transformative conversation with our guest today. He's got dumps like a truck. What? The man with the matrix of conversation. He's got the touch. He's got the power. It's Wildfire Nate Reese. How in Cybertron are you doing today, sir?
I'm great. I cannot wait to get buckled up and ready to discuss all of this. So I've got everything kind of prepped so we can unlock the keys to Vector Sigma. We can find the matrix. We can open it up. All light our darkest hours. We can talk Transformers for as much as you want, but I know that there's a few bits we've also got to do as well. I am so glad to be on the podcast.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to have you, sir. Of course, before we talk about our topic today, we are going to talk about wrestling for about 10 minutes. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do in professional wrestling, how you first got into professional wrestling, and some of your experiences.
Okay, amazing. So I essentially first started training around 2004. My first show via Future Rock Wrestling was in 2006. So I've been around a good while, and there's been quite a long running joke, particularly with some of the newer members of the rosters these days, that I was wrestling before some of them was born, which is quite a contrast. I've definitely had that conversation with the likes of Dynamite Lee Dawson, for example. So I've seen an awful lot of how the scene was initially grown and developed, particularly within the Northwest region, where you had like XWA, which is now, again, pardon the phrase, the word, but it's the right one, transformed into Odyssey Pro Wrestling. We've had Future Shock Wrestling in the way that it's been developed. We had what was the FWA back down south. So my biggest sort of exposure, again, I was very spoiled at the time when a lot of people that were, have become superstars, have potentially retired now, were essentially journeymen and trainees and guest lecturers and guest instructors. My first ever training session when I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 17-year-old was Colt Cabana, and then there just felt there was this incredible embarrassment of riches every other week at the time at training where AJ Styles might be there. There was Low Key, there was P.T. Williams, Kid Cash, and I remember one evening that, some of the pro wrestling Noah, like Misawa was there to witness people training. So just an incredible wealth of different people that were touring at the time and learning the craft that then became global stars. Like, just unbelievable experiences there. So I've wrestled throughout the whole time. I've done jiu-jitsu. I've trained constantly as well. I went through a couple of different character changes and then came back Wildfire Nate Reese sort of around 2018. And I've kind of settled into that phase now. And I think the main thing is now that I'm just getting the chance to enjoy as much as I possibly can. I'm 39, so not a spring chicken anymore, but I'm healthy, I'm in good shape, I'm enjoying everything that I get to do. I've been in tag teams, I've wrestled singles in a variety of different roles. I recently got to hold a championship for Livewire Wrestling, which is 10 minutes from my house, where my 81-year-old aunt got to come and see me defend a belt. Those are things that they're incredible experiences, alongside the 14-year-old teenage me almost freaking out when I got to fist bump Rhino last summer, and say hello. Like, there's all these different things that we can't take for granted. They're incredible. Got to perform in street fights, perform in ladder matches. I've had technical matches. I've been the absolute class clown that obviously the audience cannot wait to see get their comeuppance. I've been the gritty underdog that's come back from fighting from underneath. So I've had a whole host of different experience and exposure in the ring.
And let's talk about where that originated. So obviously you talked about your career and how varied it's been and longevity of it and your character changes. So what was that initial spark or all spark that you had with professional wrestling and thought, do you know what? I like this, could do this?
I think ever since I was young, I was always into, and again, I can imagine very similar with some of the guests you've had on here and yourselves, the comic books, the cartoons, the toys. So alongside things like what we're going to talk about a little bit later and all the great IPs like Ninja Turtles, X-Men, Marvel, Batman, the Hasbro wrestling figures, I think
Oh yes.
those were, and the trading cards were very popular at school at the time. The blue ones, if anybody remembers. I think I still have a Big Boss Man one or Repo
I
Man
had
somewhere.
loads of them.
It was,
Fun fact, just to break out of this conversation
of
for a
course.
second, disembodied voice of producer Lauren absolutely loves the Big Boss Man. We're recently doing a retrospective look at some of the old shows, and she's really connected with the Big Boss Man. So
She
I just
actually
thought
said
I'd
it's
give that a little
many
shout.
uniforms. Get it right.
No,
She said it might be many.
I prefer Big Boss Man to Big Bubba, so I didn't know whether I preferred the uniform.
I haven't bought one, just to clarify.
I literally
it's the theme song coming down from Cobb County Corner, Georgia. It's a banger. It's brilliant.
Oh, it's fantastic. Anyway, back to you. So the Hasbro toys, especially, I love that. Was there a particular Hasbro toy that you thought, oh, this is cool. This is my favorite.
So I think at the time, I remember my brother had Jake the Snake Roberts, and he had the plastic snake. Again through like car boot sales at the time, which was such a treasure trove for all of these things, particularly at the time. I had a Ricky the Dragon Steamboat one, which I was very fond of.
That one used to do my head in literally because the top was so stiff. I was always afraid it's going to crack, so I couldn't be as rough.
That was a big one. I had a couple of iterations of Hulk Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
I remember really wanting Mr. Perfect, but I didn't get him. I do have them. They're actually on the top of my fridge. That felt like the only place appropriate is a housewarming gift off a friend a couple of years ago. I've got the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, Hawk Animal. Like,
fantastic.
They're always watched over the kitchen when my beer is. Like, they're just there, and it feels the right place for them to be.
So again, when did you think, oh, I can do this? This is something that I'd like to actually do as a job or a side hustle or a hobby or whatever?
So I started jiu-jitsu at 13, and it was the closest thing at the time. I live in Fleetwood, which very far away from a lot of different places. There certainly wasn't anything of the notion of wrestling at the time or the chance. And this was very much sort of the only time you would hear of British wrestling was maybe at Blackpool Tower on the holiday camps. It was a much quieter scene at the time, or much harder exposure. So I'd start at 13. So again, it was kind of like grappling. It was kind of fun. I got to throw people around. And then I was 16 going to sixth form college. I met somebody who used to be a ring announcer at the time. And he'd just gone to the Future Shock school. And like a lot of people were when wrestling was really in that really red hot period from sort of 2000 coming up 2002, 2003, everybody had been invested. Maybe some switched off by then, but for me, hands down, and he is my all-time favorite. As soon as Rey Mysterio, and I'd seen him before previously, but debuted on SmackDown, Spider-Man gear, dove off the cage, Hurricane Ranas with Chavo, that absolutely solidified it in my head. Like, I had to give it a go. That was completely the absolute biggest thing, that this was what I wanted to do. There'd been things that had, been interesting previously, like the TLC matches, the Hardys, Jericho, Kane, and all that. But for me, seeing Ray and then the introduction of the cruiserweights, and then going back and looking at what was available within that style, and your Jushin Ligers, Jamie Noble, Ultimo Dragon, and I didn't get to see a lot of WCW at the time. So again, going back and looking at actually what the cruiserweights provided, that was a big push for me personally to, I really want to give this a go, and I've got to get this out and wrestle. And a good friend of mine, he doesn't wrestle anymore, but he was sort of kind of the impetus as well. So we both kind of went together. And for that, at least first 18 months or so, we were inseparable. Couldn't stop talking about wrestling, determined to get somewhere and keep training and have a go and get some debut matches.
And you don't seem to be slowing down, sir, because you are absolutely still an athlete. I've seen you do some phenomenal things in the ring. One of the most underrated professional wrestlers on the scene, I think, to be quite honest with you. Don't know if Gav agrees with that.
Seen you at Future Shock a few times. So, yeah, we have managed to catch it. It's been good.
Yeah. Good stuff. And your 81-year-old gran wasn't there to see you lose your championship to a Wiganer, was she?
She was there she enjoyed the great company of her iconic Brit Rest legend, milestone, cornerstone, Joey Hayes, that man. You know,
Fair enough.
And I think nothing grounds you more than, I guess, the people that maybe aren't inside the scene. Like, again, you guys, I really appreciate everything you've just said there. Very, very kind words. But I think probably my favorite thing was when I spoke to my parents that were there as well. And I said, "Oh, what do you think of the show?" And she went, "Hey, that match before you, that was fast. It was really good." And that was the full synopsis of the show. So which was Joey Hayes' match, and he knows that, and that I know that's his favourite ever review of a show that he's had in a long time.
I'm sure you appreciate that. I really enjoyed your match in Odyssey with Mickey Barnes, even though I almost lost an eye in that match, which I've said before. Did you know that you swung a Singapore cane so close to my eye that I almost lost it?
I did
feel
not
the
know.
breeze.
You never told me that.
I realized as I was saying it, I thought, I bet the only person that doesn't know this story is Wildfire Nate Reese. I made the decision to sort of move around the ring at exactly the same time as you were swinging the kendo stick back, and I felt the air on my eye. I was like, "Oh no!"
I'm so glad you're right.
If I'm going to lose an eye, if I'm going to ever lose an eye, that's the way I want to do it. So that's absolutely
it's a good story, at least, isn't it?
It would be a cool story, but you'd obviously have to say it was Mickey that took your eye out, like he squashed it or something.
Oh yeah, no, I'd have to, I'd have to work it, brother. Right, let's change gears a little bit. Our next topic is more than meets the eye. Travel to the distant future of 2005. The robots may be in disguise. The sky's the limit. So this Transformers in the 1980s, otherwise known as Gen 1. But save your energy on us. Before we go into our deep dive, I'm going to roll out a few facts. Transformers are based on two distinct Japanese toy lines, repackaged for the American and European audiences. There was Diaclone toys that were transforming vehicles, and Microman/Micro Change toys that featured smaller transforming items such as guns, cassettes, and cassette players. Needing to tie the toys to a coherent story, Hasbro came up with the general concept of Autobots and Decepticons at war and turned to Marvel Comics to help with the characters and deeper lore. The facts and stories on the early toy boxes came directly from Marvel, and a comic accompanied them. The biggest rival to Transformers was, of course, the GoBots. Despite having the backing of a toy company, Tonka, being easier to transform, cartoon written and produced by the Hanna-Barbera company, and getting a TV show and film also released, their success was absolutely eclipsed by Transformers. GoBots was later bought by Hasbro and have actually appeared in the Transformers comics now. The original Megatron toy was banned in multiple countries because it transformed into a realistic enough looking Walther P-38. Bonus fact, Walther is the brand of most notably known by James Bond. The FCC deregulated TV in 1984, which meant there was no real restrictions on toy companies creating cartoons purely to sell toys, as we've mentioned before. Often violent and teachable messages at the end of the show, like, don't forget, kids, don't stab anyone in the face and stuff along those lines. The Transformers cartoon was commissioned shortly thereafter. By 1987, 80% of Saturday morning cartoons were run by toy companies. Two mainstays of the cartoon series were Peter Cullen and Frank Welker. Optimus Prime voice actor Peter Cullen was also the voice of Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore, Voltron, and of course, Predator. Megatron actor Frank Welker was the voice of Fred from Scooby-Doo, as well as Scooby-Doo himself, Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget, Slimer from The Real Ghostbusters, and Curious George. The movie was written to kill off many characters so that new toys could be introduced. Optimus Prime's death, which I'm sure we'll talk about in great deal later on, led to massive amounts of complaints, which meant the other planned death on the G.I. Joe film of Duke was actually changed, so he was instead in a coma. The movie had a stacked cast, including Judd Nelson, straight off The Breakfast Club, Leonard Nimoy, Rick Idle, Batman Carruthers, and it was actually the last role of cinema legend Orson Welles, the gentleman behind the War of the Worlds broadcast, and what many people think is the greatest film of all time, Citizen Kane. Transformers, the transforming sound was actually created by accident, and it was created by a promotional material. It was a synthesizer ran backwards with tape and some realistic metal sounds added. Nate Reese, can you please now, in front of everyone, make the transformation sound, please?
Okay, so the sound was always like, oh.
That's good. Gav, can you do any better?
There you go.
That's good.
That's pretty good.
That's good.
Oh, that's pretty good. I think Gav's got it there. Right, so that's enough facts. Let's explore our feelings. So we talked about the first time you came involved with wrestling. What was the first time that you saw Transformers? Was it a toy? Was it the film? How did you first come across it?
So I feel it was definitely through the toys first,
Mhm.
because my brother, he's 3 years older than I am. I definitely feel that sort of, again, through the car boots and things that obviously my parents had gone through and had bought and got different toys for us at the time. Got a couple of toys, that we definitely had a 1989 Pastimes Optimus Prime, a Generation 1 Hot Rod. I think I think some of the others. We had a small Bumblebee, like the Action Master Bumblebee. We had a Power Master Blaster. I think like Tentacruel, like just really random ones, like very far, like the names get incredible later down the line, like the 87, 80, 89 line. But I definitely feel that was sort of the first exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't remember too much of watching the show until I was a bit later, but I definitely had watched the film. Because again, my brother had got that a lot from the VHS shop. And so again, I can't wait to talk about the film because there's so much in that anyway by itself.
Well, we'll come back to the film in a little bit, but I would just say it's very dark for the film to be your first exposure into Transformers. I'm surprised you didn't run away crying straight afterwards.
As I say, I think I'd seen some clips before, because I think my aunt had Sky, and Transformers, I remember specifically, wasn't on terrestrial TV or the repeats. I really don't remember. Ninja Turtles was. I think Thundercats had a brief run. He-Man had a run, but Transformers, the actual repeats, was either through, again, the VHS shop. I think I'd seen the Keys to Vector Sigma Part 1 and 2. They got Dark Awakening just after the film, which is, again, it's just rubbing salt in the wound if anybody's ever seen that episode.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go on. Let's talk about that for a second. Then. Go on, Gav. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say mine was the comics. Literally, my mum, I'd seen one comic, and she ordered, when you used to get them delivered by the newspaper guy.
Yeah.
So I would literally be sat every Saturday morning knowing it was coming. And I just literally was stacking up the comics, and then obviously the movie came out, and then the toys sort of filtered in through that. But yeah, it was the comics for me.
Quite linear, you know. Because obviously me and Gav are a little bit older than you, Nate, but I was quite linear. So I got the toys. Then as I was getting the toys, the cartoon was pretty much on, and then the film came out. So I was pretty linear. But I'll be honest with you. You might as well not talk to me about anything past season 3 of the show because didn't watch it. I was done by season 3. But we'll come to that in a little bit. Let's focus on the toys. So without any context of the film itself, Nate, what toy did you gravitate to?
It was, again, the Power Master Optimus Prime.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it was still an iconic figure. Even if you weren't really interested, and even now, people know what Optimus Prime is. He was a really great chunky toy. I've actually got the updated Studio Series version, but I had the Action Master version, Blaster. He was, again, pretty popular one. And I think, and again, kids that had enjoyed the film and who it was clearly aimed for, and we had Hot Rod as well. And just that great design, the bright colours, the flames on, probably embedded some sort of little bit on a lot of my stuff. And there's a few little bits there times on my logos and stuff.
Well, that was one of my questions later on. I was like, I've seen your ring gear. Is that directly because of Rod/Rodimus Prime?
A couple of others, to be fair, Trax as well as a similar logo. But again, it certainly has that type of, if there are bits I could use, and the colour schemes, actually, I know a lot of wrestlers do a lot of like the cosplay stuff where like they might dress up as one of the Avengers and things like that. I've never done anything directly as that, but a lot of the Transformers have at least 3 colors, and they actually fit pretty well. So sometimes the color schemes and things, if I can make that happen, like I did have like a maroon sort of black and yellow kind of singlet for a long time that was very much based around kind of Hot Rod at the time.
I thought it was, and I never said it, but I was like, yeah, I know where that's from.
Well, that's a good sort of subliminal thing because of the age of the people watching. They're going to go, I know that color scheme, so they're instantly going to register with it and get that feeling. Like a lot of the guys do it with Warhammer gear and everything else.
Yeah.
It's all, it brings up something you don't quite register until you really look and go, I know what it is now. So yeah, it does work really well.
Isn't it?
Very true, because like I say, I immediately understood that color scheme together, and the fact that there was a flame on there, I was like, well, I know what this is. Because when I first saw it, I wondered, is that Daredevil? And then I was like, no, it isn't. It's Hot Rod. So Hot Rod and obviously Optimus Prime are probably the two we've landed on there. As you've grown older, have you continued to? Well, obviously you have continued to collect the toys. Have you gone the route of trying to get as many different versions of your favorites as possible, or have you gone very expansive and tried to get every smaller character and every minor character?
The way I've tried to do it at the moment, and again, it's such a deep well, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
I've tried to get at least one of all the characters I like. So my favorite character is Sideswipe. I've got the Masterpiece Sideswipe up there. I've got the Siege version. I know that they're going to bring out a studio series, I think, quite soon of him. So I've been kind of holding off if it'll change. But he has quite a great design and a look that doesn't really change that much, to be honest.
So if it doesn't change, what are the differences in those versions you've just told me?
It can be a mixture. It can be sometimes the alt mode. So
okay.
So Sideswipe, for example, is a Lamborghini Countach. The Siege one was based on the Netflix show where it was before they landed on landed on Earth. So his was like a futuristic car, essentially. But the design, let me find him. It'll be one. Going into the vault here, guys.
Whilst waiting.
Well, there were twins, the Sunstreaker and Sideswipe that were the two Lambos.
Oh, it's beautiful, that.
Yeah, so
just put it a little bit more central, Nate. There we go. Perfect.
Yeah. Again, nice and clean. So again, pretty solid. Like, I know that there's a new version out based on the Devastation video game, but it's very similar. And I know for the studio series, which is based on the 86 film, even though he's not technically in it, he's in the deleted scenes. They've got a concept, and he's going to come out probably within, I would say, 12 months.
I just want to talk about the 40th anniversary Optimus Prime that they advertised a couple of days ago, which I saw. Basically, the corpse of Optimus Prime was all grayed out. How does everyone feel about playing with the corpse?
I don't fancy that.
I don't fancy that either.
I've got the 25th anniversary, so I'm happy.
That's like Luke Skywalker's charred remains of his auntie and uncle behind them as toys. It's
a bit weird.
It's a bit weird. But, each their own. I get it. So is there like a holy grail of the toys that you would like to get, or have you sort of already got it there, Nate?
No, to be fair, there's a couple. I think I would love Fortress Maximus.
And tell me who that is.
So he is one of right towards the end of the line for what they would call Series 4. I know you said you'd upped out Series 3. It was 3 episodes. And it was basically, they had to get in as many characters as they possibly could within those 3 episodes, and they give that a good go.
They did really well.
Characters at least in that. So he was kind of like a ginormous base, but the idea was that one of the Transformers, the small one, was the head, and it would attach onto it to be a ginormous robot. So
okay. It's a bit like the construction one. I'm forgetting the name of right now.
That's Devastator. We have Metroplex.
More scale.
Yeah, Metroplex was the Autobot City originally, And then when they did the Headmaster range, they wanted a bigger one. So obviously then he became the larger city, and then Scorponok was the Decepticon larger city kind of idea, I think.
I mean, obviously. Of course.
I never got either of them two. I got Metroplex when it came out as a release for a surprise birthday, which was amazing. But then obviously I think I got a bit maybe too old to really be that bothered. I don't know. But yeah, I never got Fortress or Scorponok, but they're kind of my grails. So
yeah, I also really, really want. I know they're just starting to redo some of the combiners, like you mentioned, Devastator there.
yeah,
They've just done Bruticus, they've done Superion. I was a really big Technobots fan. I loved all the individual designs. So I really want Computron when they get around to doing it. That's kind of my grail. And if they do a new version, they're long, way overdue. There's a character called Nightbeat, who's very more familiar with the comics.
I had the original Nightbeat. Was it the smaller guns? It was a target master with the smaller guns.
It was one of the. He had, he was a power master. So I think he had. No, he was a headmaster, but he had the guns. It blew kind of like a. Then they kind of made him like the Sam Spade detective type of the Transformers. Simon Furman.
Yeah,
a lot in the UK stories, and he's a character. Absolutely desperate to be redone.
So did he originate in the comic then? Because it's quite unusual from the Gen 1 figures to originate in the comics or the cartoon. Usually they would be toys first.
No, he was a toy.
Right.
He ended up, a version of him ended up in one of the Japanese cartoons.
Oh, yeah.
After Series 4. So after Series 3, the Japanese goes a whole different strand of continuity. There's Headmasters, there's Victory, there's Zone, and it has very much its own thing. Transformers the movie didn't even come out till later on in Japan. I think it was 92 maybe. So even some of the things like they had no idea what the film was about or what had gone on. So it had literally its own thing for quite some time after the show had finished in the US.
There must have been a disconnect for the Japanese audience because they'd seen the Diaclone figures prior to this as well. So they must have known that it was a bit of a weird continuity anyway, right?
Yes, and I think with certain characters like, again, that gets brought up in the movie, like Prowler, I've got on the t-shirt here. It does not go very well for Prowler.
He's on the prowl. Show us the t-shirt.
So I'm always a big fan of the old artwork. So it's the Prowl box artwork.
Yeah.
And fantastic design and very memorable police car design.
Yeah,
and
he was one of my favorites.
Was the impetus for the Autobot logo.
Yes. Him and Jazz were always my favorites for whatever reason.
My Jazz story was for my 7th birthday, I got Jazz, got him, I unwrapped him, took him out of the box, went to transform him, broke him in half. I was devastated as a kid. Yeah. Obviously, my mum with Inferno. I was really upset, and Inferno is now my most disliked Transformer ever. I just don't ever want to see one again. But I do sort of look for, if I see a good Jazz, I always get it now.
To be fair,
it's up to me, Gav.
When I was a kid, I quite liked him actually.
If it's up to me, Gav, I will make sure you never see another Inferno as long as I have any control over that, which I probably won't. So it's funny because I was going to bring this up. So yeah, they were quite easy to break. Nate, why do you think that, considering the GoBots were so much simpler to work, why do you think the Transformers were so much more popular, given how complex some of them were?
I think two things. It's the design. I think the look of them. If you compare, I don't know, say Grimlock, who's a Tyrannosaurus Rex as well, to one of the GoBots, I don't know, Crasher or something like that. They just don't compare, do they? In certain ways.
No. It's the robot mode that lets them down. They just look goofy, whereas the Transformers look like an anime robot as the time when we kind of saw some of the Japanese cartoons a little bit, and it had that look. And I think it's that futuristic look that got everyone hooked, I think.
What I'm keen to know is, as well, is like I say, they were so difficult. They being the Transformers was so difficult for some of them to transform. Why do you think kids stuck with it?
Essentially the characters and how developed and fleshed out they were. And I know you mentioned before with sort of they'd gone to Marvel to help flesh out the storyline. Bob Budiansky is the absolute unsung hero because he created so many character profiles for literally all of the 1984 product line, 85, 86, 87. And again, it was either he was just given a toy, it was like, you need to come up with a profile for this character, or Flora O'Deary, who did a lot of the later designs and drawings, particularly like those in Transformers the movie. You can see they have quite a similar sort of character style. But he came up with all the different like character profiles, their personalities would be, what their weapons were like, what their skills were, what their weaknesses were. They had the old tech spec cards on the back, so they might have different things.
And the little red sort of see-through thing on every box, so you could only sort of see it if you had one of them. And it was just, it just felt futuristic, didn't it, for everything else that was out?
That's it. And it had such an investment. And then alongside that, you had this cartoon, which still, in certain ways, some, particularly like the first series, some of season 2, it's still quite well animated in comparison to a lot of the other cartoons of the 80s. If you compare like a good Transformers episode to He-Man, it's like night and day. They also had incredible voice actors, like, Peter, I'll talk about Peter Cullen a little bit later, Frank Welker. If you've ever seen anything ever in the history of the world, Frank Welker's done a voice or an animal noise for it. Absolute unsung hero. Your Alan Oppenheimer's, who's the most famous for the voice of Skeletor. A lot of those characters, they just got right with the voices as well, which again, you still know what Optimus Prime sounds like. Soundwave was Dr. Claw voice kind of sped up through a modulator, but you know exactly what they sound like in your head. You know what Starscream sounds like. Or Grimlock or somebody like that.
Well, let's move on to the cartoon now. Let's move away from the toys. But one final bit on the toys and the cartoon together. Do you feel like it's a bit of a cop-out having multiple characters basically look the same but have a different colorway to them? Or is it completely necessary in the field that they were working in?
They were making money.
Also, they only kind of went for the Decepticon planes, really. So it was a fleet of planes, I guess. And
they had like Prowl and Blue Streak, and then later Smokescreen. And again, when you actually read their character bios, all three of them are very different, very interesting characters, and they're all three of my favorites. But yeah, it was mainly seen as like the armies, wasn't it? And again, I know a lot of people who collect like Warhammer, they'd have that for their army builds, wouldn't they? Like familiar drone sort of look. So that's where you'd have the Seekers, which started off
Seekers, that's what I was trying to think of.
They were the later, the Scourge and Cyclonus had their, it was a debated thing of how many Cyclonus and his armada there were, but it was
what would happen and where they appeared.
Even on the cartoons, like you say, you'd have characters that change color from one scene to the next as well. Less so in the film, but definitely in the actual cartoon with the continuity driving people mad. Yeah. But like I say, much better than He-Man, to be quite fair. So it's quite a violent TV show. So why did it appeal to kids so much?
Because it was violent.
There was always a lot of action. I think it didn't really. It's only when you look back at maybe season 1 where they've got very familiar plots. If you try and watch all of that together, you can see why we're like, kids might have got bored if they watched them all, like how we binge watch things now. But like season 2, where there was a new adventure, technically every day through syndication, there'd be new characters. There's usually a story centered around like a particular character, and then they might be on Earth, they might be in space, there might be this thing, there might be that thing. So it was always continually changing anyway. New characters always being introduced. So again, if you weren't a fan of Inferno, he might be in one episode, but you wouldn't have to worry about him a few episodes later. And again, if you've got somebody like Jazz, he'll appear in, like, say, the God Gambit with Omega Supreme and Perceptor and Astro Train, and then the next episode might be totally different.
So let's not talk about the film quite yet, but what are some of your favorite story arcs from the cartoon specifically, and talk us through why?
Okay, so Series 3, The Return of Optimus Prime, will come back to that, I think, later, possibly after the film.
That makes sense. Yeah.
In terms of some of the other ones, I think, just going off the top of my head, I'm just trying to think of Series 1, Series 2. Series 2,
don't worry about the names or anything. Just give us the general gist.
Series 2, The Gambler, I always enjoyed Smokescreen. It's a really bizarre, wacky adventure. It introduces a mercenary character called Defcon, which is kind of, again, a bit of a deep cut for fans. But it was just this, like, space casino adventure that was so different than a lot of the other ones. I think the piece of Vector Sigma is really good with the creation of the aerial bots. I was a big fan of The Burden Hardest to Bear, which is quite a nicely animated episode with Hot Rod. That he's a character that isn't always very fond of in the fan base initially, or because of what happened in the film. And then in Series 3, his character arc as this leader, he's quite of a moribund, sort of melancholy kind of, there's not much character growth. That's his character arc. His growth is there in a really good episode. Grimlock's New Brain, where they make the Technobots.
That's the one I remember. I remember that too.
Very fun episode, especially Season 3 is very sci-fi heavy, and some of them are very hit or miss. It's a really fun, refreshing one. Again, cool characters being introduced. I'm just trying to think
one of mine was the Jetfire one, where he was Decepticon originally. Then obviously they turned him to the Autobots, and he
Fire in the Sky.
Yeah, that's the one. That's probably one of my favourites.
There was some controversy over that, wasn't it? Because wasn't he well, you tell me, Nate, if you know this, but wasn't there a rights issue with the Japanese audience because his rights belonged to another TV show?
Yes. So I want to say Markatron, maybe, or something along those lines. Essentially, it was a whole toy. And so that's why on the cartoon he's called Skyfire. And that's why he was only used incredibly briefly, because they weren't allowed to use him after that. I think it is
Jetfire normally, wasn't it?
Yeah. The toy looked totally different to every other Transformer because of that range. It was a weird looking manga-y type character.
And
also massive, right?
Yeah, he was pretty big.
Yeah. It was a really, really big toy and big in scale, and he kind of had it like that. And then other characters they introduced, kind of similarly, like a Perceptor or Shockwave is he's my all-time favorite Percepticon by a mile. They kind of were able to fit in with a lot of the characters anyway, but yeah, Jetfire stood out in a very different way. It looks great, incredible design, but they just weren't allowed to use him very often.
Oh, absolutely fair. You've talked about the changing of scale, because for a small child brain, having to sort of work out, well, why is this handgun suddenly now a massive 500-foot robot or something? How important is that storytelling device in justifying the fact that you're playing with two different toy lines?
I think it's something that they've had to they've really put a lot more effort in later on. I know in the IDW comic run, Simon Furman created the whole deal around mass shifting, particularly with Megatron, and that it expends a lot of energy on to change to that size. But again, it allows the gun to be really, really powerful. That was kind of what they did with that. But I think for the most part with kids, it's like, because the range was so interesting and dynamic, and you can have these cars, you can have these planes, you can have a tank. Hound was a Jeep. Again, the Dinobots, which again was clearly a massive success for them. The Constructicons, very, very memorable. You got kids weren't bothered. They got all these cool toys, cool vehicles.
I wasn't.
No, and that's it. They made the noise, so whenever the great transformation noise happened, something happened.
What's the noise again, Nate? Thank you so much.
I don't know if it's transforming or Motley laughing. I'm not practice, but
either that or a parrot in some sort of Madame Tussauds thing. But I liked it either way. So talking about the voice acting for a moment, what made the voice of Optimus Prime so iconic? Because this is Reagan era US. you're expecting people to be dead macho, dead Rambo-ish, but Optimus Prime isn't like that. So explain to me what makes him the longevity so much.
No, I'm really glad you brought this up because that's a big thing. And there are reels on Instagram and YouTube and all that. If you can see it, a little interview with Peter Cullen about his brother Larry. So the idea was when he was about to be, well, he was about to have the audition to become Optimus Prime. He was speaking to his brother Larry. Larry was a Marine, and he got stopped and was given this really vital information that it was like, Peter, if you want to be a hero, be a real hero. Not one of these Hollywood types that screams and yells. Be strong enough to be gentle. And he showcases that in the interview that he translated that into Larry's voice, from Larry's voice into Optimus Prime. And I think that's why it resonates so much. Like, Prime's the best leader character ever on any of these sorts of IPs, properties. You know, you think of, like, again, Leonardo or whoever leads a ghost. No, Optimus Prime's the guy. And it's because of the soul that Peter Cullen imbued into that character that even later on when they made the Michael Bay films, they couldn't ignore that. And the demand for that was there. And it does feel real. And for Generation 1, he's a mixture of, like, the cowboy elements of John Wayne, particularly the first two episodes. He's quite gung-ho still. Mm-hmm. And again, sticking it to Megatron. What's the line? I think it's like, you're yesterday's your junk Megatron, yesterday's model, right? You're going to be on the scrap heap. Said literally in like the John Wayne voice. That's from Mother Meets the Eye Part 2, I think. But again, he also has these great words of wisdom that still resonate even now. Like, I think when he talks to Chip, who's a paraplegic kid in the wheelchair, it's like, don't give up on your dreams, Chip. Your future's built based on dreams. And these little pearls of wisdom hidden every now and again. And he was kind of like Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince.
He was.
I see that. Again, the gung-ho elements of John Wayne, but then, like, he'd learn Earth cultures and try and, like, copy the phrases, even if it didn't quite pan out properly. And there was something wholesome still about this great leader character. And also, one thing that the Michael Bay films in particular really missed the point of is he is a soldier and he fights and there's that, but it's the torment of fighting, the torment of killing, which people have completely missed the point of Prime. That he's not there he doesn't want to kill people. And it's the effect this war has on these characters that, again, for all these different iterations, that's what makes him so compelling. And that he is heroic and brave and he is strong, but he's careful enough and compassionate enough to think about others, care for those around him, particularly those that hold the species that are tiny in scale, or fellow Autobots like Beachcomber, who's a pacifist and doesn't want to fight, but can still see the value in everybody. I think in one of the episodes, Microbots, he's scolding Brawn because Brawn's trying to be quite cruel to Perceptor because Perceptor doesn't want to fight. And he sees the strengths and the qualities in every single person. Freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Budiansky kind of made the big famous quote of him. And he just has that real leadership quality. And I think Budiansky as well, when you look back, Prime and his kind of initial, like, circle, if you will, very much based on Star Trek.
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
Spock. Absolutely Spock. Ratchet was Bones. He was kind of like Captain Kirk. Bumblebee was kind of like Chekhov. You know, it was very much... Wheeljack was Scotty. Like, you can see where some of those elements have definitely been implementing those character tropes there.
I'm glad you mentioned Spock because he was my next talking point in a sense. So, for those that don't know, Galvatron is played in the film by Leonard Nimoy, who is the voice of Spock. And he approaches this in quite a similar way to Peter Cullen. He's much softer than Megatron. So the question I've got for you, well, a couple of questions. The first question I've got is, do you consider Galvatron is Megatron or is it a different character? And aside from that, what makes Galvatron a more menacing character?
Okay, so just before we go, like, Frank Wellcross told a really great story with Megatron's voice. If the characterization of Megatron is essentially he's a gladiator that was caught in a caste system, Obviously, this wasn't really in the show too much, but it's referred later. But he recognized it even as a villain, and he's very tyrannical and maniacal in it. Lots of evil laughs, a bit like Skeletor.
Very
But
Skeletor.
that like rusty sort of like he was always in pain. There's a real interesting element there, and both Cullen and Wells get to revisit those in another series called Transformers Prime much later on, and the movies. But that's where that like look for the voices. In terms of Galvatron, so Galvatron was
Firstly,
Megatron reformatted.
is he? Yeah, I'm going to say explain to the audience who may not know where Megatron ends and where Galvatron begins.
Okay, so the first act, I suppose you can call it, of the Transformers the movie in 1986. There's a huge battle in which a lot of our beloved characters, childhood memories, toy lines are brutally wiped out. And very, very difficult.
Some don't even get much of anything. They just lay dead. You don't even get a reason.
We'll come to that later.
We'll come to it.
Bit, but Optimus Prime and Megatron have their final confrontation, and both of them wounded greatly in battle. Ultimately, at the Decepticons retreat, Megatron is basically cast adrift by Starscream in a coup, and he's reformatted by the main villain, Unicron. He's a bit like Galactus, if people kind of are familiar with more Marvel terms, voiced by Orson Welles, very, very unwell, Orson Welles in his last role at the time.
He died a few months later.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a big rumor that between Nelson Shin, who was the visual director, who Orson Welles would only have those two. He was sitting on the recordings, but there's a big rumor that Nimoy picked up some of those lines as well, and they modulated them.
I'd heard that.
Yeah, so anyway, Megatron is reformatted, and I think at that point he is Megatron reformatted. At the ending of the film, Hot Rod, who becomes the new leader, Rodimus Prime, that was a name there. But we'll stick with Hot Rod. Hot Rod's cool. Anyway, he fends him off, throws him out, and that leads directly into Series 3, where Galvatron's been adrift. He's in a planet. He wakes up on a planet called Char, and the chemicals in this big, like, chemical pool have sort of messed with his mind. He's a lot more maniacal, a lot more insane. Frank Welker returns to do a very different voice. It's a really memorable voice, very cool, very different Megatron. That, to me, is where sort of he is still Megatron, but it's the Megatron side of him's gone.
He also refers to Megatron in the third person because he says, well, Megatron did this rather than I did this.
But also, as well, in the comics, they did a 2006, Target 2006, is what I remember.
What is
when he gets thrown out of Unicron, he has a time button, presses it, goes back to the past, and actually fights Megatron. So it's all...
They do that, and they also do it in... I don't know if you ever read Time Wars. That came a little bit later.
So that was great as well.
Then there was an alternate Galvatron from a really great story called Rhythms of Darkness.
Oh, yeah. Great name.
It's incredible. It's again, that's one of those stories that stuck with me because I'm a big fan of like those when we get to tell dystopian stories, so like X-Men Days of Future Past, Future Tense from Gargoyles, which is a deep cut but a very, very cool little episode. Rhythms of Darkness was a one-off comic where the Decepticons were winning in this post-apocalyptic future. There was very few Autobots left. I think there was like Prowl, Jazz, Getaway, Inferno, Chainclaw, like
Inferno.
I like Big Red. He's cool. And it essentially has a scene where Galvatron is actually going insane, shouting at the corpse of Rodimus Prime, whose arms are draped across the Twin Towers. This came out in 1991, just for context. Like, obviously,
yeah.
But just a really cool post-apocalyptic story. So I think Galvatron was kind of the go-to that it would have like different iterations of. And I know more these days they're quite keen to keep them separate and have them as two different characters.
Yeah, I wondered where you were at with that one. But Leonard Nimoy's in the film, his version of the voice is very, very different. And you're right in what you were saying about season 3. And that's one of the things that I enjoyed about that was that you do get Welker back, and it is a version of that which is quite creepy and maniacal. But yeah, I mean, Nimoy's voice is very much the yin to the yang to the yin of Optimus Prime in the film. He's quite menacing and quite soft spoken as well.
Very cold.
Yeah, very
to the
cold.
Point, ruthless. Yeah, very different than, you know, even when like Optimus Prime, I think the one time he scolds Ironhide at the beginning, it's still through out of friendship and care for the situation. Like every line he can ever say, and again, a lot of people know a lot of the familiar lines from his sequences in the movie, including Megatron must be stopped no matter the cost, Dinobots destroy Devastator, like lots and lots of little bits and pieces. And you can think there's so many great Optimus lines. I'll go back and watch every now and again these great clips of the advice he gives, even on different episodes. Even like the episode where he's like learning basketball off Spike, and he's not doing it right. He's not learning what the terminology is, but he's trying. And that's what makes Optimus resonate so much, is he'd always try, he always cares. And through all these different versions, it's why like the Michael Bay films, I appreciate them, but when he's like ripping people apart, saying "give me your face" and stuff like that, and he's shooting people down mercilessly, it's not Prime.
No, it's not right, is it? But
remember, kids, don't rip things apart like that. That's my tag at the end of the episode. Remember, kids, don't do that.
To be fair, they did a small selection of PSAs as well.
PSAs, that's the word I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, so they did about, I want to say 6 or 7 that would sort of tag on to the end of some of the series 2 episodes. Like I think one was like Bumblebee talking to 2 kids when one had planned to run away from home, things like that. So they had a couple of them that a lot of the other cartoons like He-Man did. Absolutely, there was a Sermon on the Mount in every episode. Mask did as well.
They had to. They had to. And again, explain to the audience why they had to, Nate.
I think it was to help. It was often used to educate children on sort of moral lessons, right or wrong. He-Man would do it directly. So something would come up in the story where a character had maybe been greedy and their greed had got them in trouble. Or like Orko had kept a secret or something like that.
Said another way, they did this so that basically they could justify the TV show as having a moral implication to it, so they could keep on the air because all they were selling toys. That's exactly what that was.
I did love with Transformers in that respect, is that they didn't really have to do that very often, did they? It was just badass robots kicking ass for ages.
Yeah, pretty much. They got away with a lot more because they were because with G.I. Joe and with He-Man and a few of these things, you'd have all the guns replaced with lasers and everyone would miss, and you wouldn't use the weapons as weapons. You'd like, instead of using a sword to kill someone, you would chop a chain off and something would fall on them. They would do things like this, but you didn't really have that with Transformers because they were robots. You could do whatever.
Yeah, that was it. Like Michelangelo wasn't allowed his nunchucks and things like that. Exactly. So he'd have to skirt around anything, and Spider-Man wasn't allowed to punch anybody in '94.
Exactly that. The glory age of deregularized cartoons. So we talked about the film a little bit. Give me an overview of your thoughts on the film. I think we've well established that it was kind of the beginning of the end for me and my fandom, because killing Optimus Prime, even though they did bring him back, it's kind of the end for me. But explain to me how you view the film and whether you think it sent it off in a direction that you didn't like or you did like, or just talk about it.
So the film essentially bridges the gaps between season 2, season 3, if you will. So for context, if you've been a fan from 1984 to 1986 when it was released, you've potentially seen 65 cartoon episodes before this. And this film comes out, and there is some huge pluses about it. Animation's gorgeous. You've mentioned before they had some of these celebrity voices.
Western film, wasn't it? Apparently, like the first ever fully sort of manga-styled Western release. I think
surely Akira
was sort of
No?
But I think sort of that was maybe brought to a mainstream audience that
Yeah.
people may have seen or promoted as such. Again, using that Sunbow and I think it was Flesh, I think maybe, that had that sort of the full animation style, very fluid. The characters looked amazing. Animation and the movements really nice. Again, it's such a step up above from any of the episodes that have been on.
Oh yeah.
You had the celebrity voice, like you mentioned. Whether that was to appeal to anyone in particular, I'm not too sure, but I suppose it's a way to get
it was
around
straight off the Breakfast Club. So the guy
Yeah,
playing
and
Hot
Robert
Rod
Stack,
Yeah.
So
Eric
that was a big
Idle.
deal. Eric Idle, yeah. You had a
Weird
song from
Al.
Weird Al.
Yeah.
I was
I
the
do
same
get
thing.
the soundtrack.
Yeah.
The soundtrack, I think, is something that still is another reason why the film resonates so much. I mean, the film is still very popular now. It's actually due its 40th anniversary in the US this week. I believe it's meant to be re-released in cinemas September 17th to 21st in the UK. So I'm absolutely stood outside my window watching day and night, to see when it turns up at any of the cinemas near me. Obviously we'll start with the soundtrack first. So The Touch by Stan Bush was
I actually
never
got that
supposed.
rock band as well.
Yeah, it's on Rock Band. It was famously
Boogie
parodied by
Nights.
Mark Wahlberg in Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
For those of you who are more adult collectors that may have seen that film, it was never supposed to be on the soundtrack. It was actually a film. It was actually a song that was written for Stallone's Cobra.
Okay.
And they were just like, well, let's chuck it on this. And it's actually so intrinsically linked now. I know a lot of the conventions recently, Stan Bush will always play Dare. He'll always play The Touch as well. You mentioned Weird Al before as well. Dare to Be Stupid was on there. Mm. You also had, and again, another underrated factor was Vince DiCola's incredible synth score.
Yeah, so good.
And for those of you that may not know who that is, if you've ever seen Rocky IV,
all the
great trumpets.
Yeah.
It reminded me of which I've been I didn't put it in my notes, but I've been thinking this for years and years and years. It's got a hint of the Incredible Hulk TV show in some of the ballady bits.
The Lonely Man theme, yeah.
I can sort of visualize Bill Bixby walking to another town whilst I listen to that. So that's just my little bit.
Yeah, and I think that really added a whole other layer to it as well. That soundtrack really helps underpin all the movie, all the sequences that happen. And obviously you've got the new characters, the whole 86 toy line that they brought in.
Yep.
So, the Fluoro Dairy had been... This was the first time that they didn't have toys straight away. This was on them to design these characters, ready to introduce them. So you can see sort of between Hot Rod, Cup, Springer, RC, Blur, Wheelie, they have a similar look. It's almost like a Power Rangers type vibe, where the costumes are slightly different. And they sort of different personalities, but they have a stylistic link, similar with Cyclone, Scourge, Galvatron as well.
You never got RC though. You never got RC until years later.
Got him. The Americans got her figure, but we didn't get it. Same with Swoop though, and the Dinobots. We never got Swoop as a UK release.
Swoop was like a European exclusive, very difficult to get at the time.
Yeah, I remember in the comics there used to be a little. Obviously now you swap over Marketplace and stuff, but there used to be a letters page where you could, obviously all the fans, then there'd be another bit which was I'll swap Galvatron for Swoop, and you could have, there was a little swaps page, and it was just a risk of posting at each other. It was crazy.
And they used to have
I just want to touch on. Oh, go on. Sorry, Nate. Go on.
It's okay. It's just a thing where with some of the toys, when you get them, you would cut little tokens out, and you could send them off for exclusives, and some of them, like Swoop later on, and Sunstreaker was available, or like the exclusive ones that didn't have direct packaging, like the Omnibots, Overdrive, Camshaft, Downshift. You could get them straight exclusively from the manufacturer as well if you collected enough tokens and sent a lofty £8 or whatever else to receive it.
Hope you got it.
So I do want to just talk about the film. We're going to wrap up quite soon, but one last thing on the film. Are you aware of the problems they had coloring the film and making it? Because when they first started doing the film, it kept coming out dead grey because the technology just wasn't there. Are you aware of the problems they had with that, and what do you think about some of the really grey scenes?
Yeah, there was a lot to do with sort of like the animation, the grainy cell stock, and also the production timescale. They actually put that film into production, I think December of 1984, so they knew what they wanted to do for quite some time with this film. And then obviously it actually suits the tone and the content of the film
I think it does
because
too.
unlike any other episode of the show ever, seeing so many of your characters, like you say, even if you don't see them be brutally
Yeah,
shot or attacked and killed, like Wheeljack's corpse and things like
yeah, you
that,
just
and
see him
wind
lying
charges.
there.
Just and again, that's a character that people really came to love for 65 episodes, and he's got a hole in his chest and he's looking lifeless.
A lot
To
of
like
complaints. A lot of complaints over it.
whole, so many of them, and again, that's why they did get the push back to reinvigorate Optimus Prime and bring him back. And this was after they just put into production episode I mentioned before called Dark Awakening, where it's like a horror episode where they go to the Autobot mausoleum and he's reincarnated as a zombie. So that
Yeah,
felt like absolute salt in the wound at the time.
It didn't do me any favors. I'll tell you that, Nate. Did not do me any
Yeah,
favors at all.
probably
I
pushed
cried
a
a
lot of
lot.
people away
Hmm. No, it did. It
from
did.
because again, when
Um,
it changes so much from this beloved character and he's not in it to then, well, then he might be back, but they're certainly not in a good way. Then they had to push and bring him back in
I'd say.
regardless of continuity. They just let's get him
yeah,
back as quickly as we can.
Well, yeah, it very much is a dark film. Very much the second Star Wars film, Empire Strikes Back, in many many ways. Do you? I'm assuming you think that people give Hot Rod too much grief, then, Nate.
In some ways, yeah, because I think Hot Rod's a great character. I think great design out of the ones that
Mhm.
Flora Deary designed. I really like Springer's design as well. I think Springer gets some of the best lines in the movie. He's kind of like the Han Solo type character, isn't he?
yeah. I like him.
He just, it's funny how he's actually not in the zeitgeist of maybe being as popular anymore, or they've not really revisited him. But I think that's maybe because the name's not very memorable.
Possibly, possibly. And you had so many good core characters that people missed. So you're
Yeah.
always going to have, sort of retro blindness for that sort of thing. So let's move away from the film. Let's talk about the expanded universe, the comics and the video games. No, let's not spend too long on this, but are there anything particularly that you'd like to shout out from the comics or the video games from this era that you think are particularly good and people should look out for?
So I'll do a very quick, because I'm a big comics collector. I've got a lot of
Go
Transformers
right ahead.
ones. So um, Marvel UK, anything written by Simon Furman, probably a really good thing to sort of dig out. Simon Furman's been very synonymous with any sort of writing with the Transformers for quite a long time. He wrote, again, some of those story arcs we mentioned, like Time Wars, Target 2006. These really great story arcs where, again, he'd bring lesser known characters in. There will be a body count. There will be stakes. Bob Budiansky got really frustrated for the first 50 issues of the US run because it was constantly editorial mandate. We need this character involved. We need this character involved. So he couldn't really write that many stories.
Yeah,
If there was one, maybe, again, just because I'm looking at Blaster here, Into the Smelting Pool is a very, very famous one where Bob Budiansky kind of took Blaster and made him this brooding loner on Cybertron fighting against Straxus, who was one of like the warlords left by Megatron on Cybertron. That's pretty popular. Issue number 3 had Spider-Man as a guest star appearance.
Never heard of him.
That bloke. Issue 5 had a very famous cover with the Transformers are all dead and it's Shockwave on the front.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all the back end when Simon Furman took over both the UK and the US run, from Matrix Quest, Rhythms of Darkness, all the way through. Really, really great trades. Really, even now you can still pick them up. Really great reads. The IDW run, I collected every single single issue of that initial first run from 2006 to I think 2016, 17 when it finished. Really great stories. There's one by James Roberts called More Than Meets the Eye. It's a separate series, and it's kind of the closest thing you get to like a team book, where it's like Hot Rod, Ultra Magnus, and a few others have like a spaceship with a little crew, so like Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica type stuff. All sorts of different things happen. Megatron actually chooses to defect and claims he wants to become an Autobot, and there's a real attempt of a redemptive arc there, and it's again very nuanced, very complicated. It's just excellent all the way through. If you want to get into something now, Skybound have recently took over. Daniel Warren Johnson does an incredible job. The first 4 volumes are out with his work. Again, for wrestling fans, he's a huge wrestling fan, and a lot of the fight in that book is characters doing things like the German suplex, lariats. Because robots fighting each other like toys, it works really nicely. So again, very cool artwork. Has the heart and soul, a little bit more of an adult edge, but still has like Prime learning. You know, one of the first issues in that run, he stands on a deer by accident, and it's even the cost of that and understanding that they don't shy away from learning those really harsh lessons alongside some of the harbours of war. So there's quite a lot of great comic content out there. I'm just trying to think. All the Transformers spotlights IDW did. Stormbringer's a great one that you can just buy as a one-off. All Hail Megatron has artwork by Guido Guidi, which looks very much like the cartoon. That could be quite you pick that one up and read if you're interested in that format. There's lots and lots of great comics. I've beer all day. I don't want to impress too much. I know you want to mention the games too.
No, that's fine. Yeah, you mentioned the games now, and then we'll move on to our game, which I'll test your mettle.
Tremendous.
Unintended.
Yeah, absolutely. The 2 games that stick out for me: Fall of Cybertron. War of Cybertron was a great game anyway, heavily inspired by sort of Gears of War, but you could transform, you could move around. Fall of Cybertron, they just took it to the next level. Activision, get that on the stores. They've been talking about it for ages, saying they've got the licensing still. Please make that accessible. In Fall of Cybertron in particular, you would play as different characters on each level. So like the first couple, you are Optimus Prime and Cybertron, and you get this awesome like power up, a bit like the Hammer of Dawn if you play Gears of War, but it's Metroplex. So basically, at certain points, you can put your laser designator, and wherever enemies are shooting your Metroplex, who's ginormous, comes and just crunches them or punches them. There's a great sequence where Megatron's got him Prime on the ropes, and it just says press B, just this giant fist just smushed down. It's incredible. And you play as Grimlock one level, Jazz and Cliffjumper in a stealth level, Jazz in like an action oriented. Just you play Decepticons as well. Really, really good. Transformers Devastation, which is easier to get and is still available on consoles in different formats. That was more like a Bayonetta type arcade hack and slash type thing. More G1 inspired. They got the voices back, Peter Cullen, for example, Frank Welker, all those guys. So that felt like an episode of the cartoon in a video game. That's a very, very fun, like, if you like Streets of Rage and all those classic hack and slashes and stuff.
I do.
Yeah, it's well worth having a look, and I think quite cheap on a lot of the formats now. So those are my 2 recommendations, gaming-wise.
Good stuff. Right, well, from one game to another. So I'm going to explain this. I'm going to give you a choice, first of all. So this game, you've got a choice of either I'll just give you the name of the Transformer, and then you have to tell me who it is in collaboration with.
Okay.
And if I've made it up or if it's a real thing. So these are action figures, these are toys, and they are in collaboration with another intellectual property. So, for example, Star Trek is an intellectual property. So has there been a Transformer merged with Star Trek? Who knows? So I can either give you the name and you can tell me the property and whether or not I'm bullshitting you, or I'll give you the name and the property and make it a little easier, and then you can just tell me if I'm bullshitting or not.
Let's go with the name first. Let's try it.
Let's try easy mode first.
Let's go for it.
Okay. TARDIS Prime.
That was false.
Yeah, gotta be false.
What's the license I'm talking about? What's
Doctor
the IP? Doctor Who. That is indeed an absolute lie from your boy Steve. But that was an easy one. So, there you go. Frankentron.
That's true.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's based on like horror characters. So obviously based on Frankenstein. It's a repaint of Headmaster Mindwipe, and that came out a couple of years ago.
Nailed it. Yeah, very good. Agent Knight. Knight is spelled Knight.
That one is also true. Knight Rider. Yeah.
Correct. Gigawatt.
I've got a gigawatt in this one over here. That's the DeLorean.
Nailed it. Jigglytron.
Unfortunately, I don't think there is a Pokemon just yet, but they could be, but I'm going to say false.
That is correct. It is false, and it was indeed Pokemon. Dreamhouse Prime.
No.
Not yet. No, I feel like... Again, it's
what do you think that
Barbie's
property was?
So...
Barbie's Dreamhouse, and that is indeed a massive falsehood. Nimbus Magnus.
I think that's true. I can't think of the IP, but I feel that I feel that's
if I was to add a number to the Nimbus of so say Nimbus 2000, would that help you?
I'm not sure actually. I feel like I'm divided between either like 2000 AD or like Fireball XL5, one of those Jerry Anderson shows, but
both very wrong on that front.
Okay.
So I'll tell you the product first of all, or the IP first of all.
Go on, do you know? Go on then, voice from nowhere.
What did you say then? Disembodied voice of Lauren.
Harry Potter, the Nimbus 2000 is the broomstick.
Oh, of course, right.
That is the IP.
Thank
so
you, Lauren.
Is that a filthy lie or is that true?
It's a lie.
It is indeed a lie. Optimus, Ryu, and Megat.
They're true.
That is true. Yeah, seen them.
Street Fighter 2 specifically. Frequency. So FREAKWENCY and 8 tracks.
Yes, it's true, and it's the Stranger Things crossover.
Correct. Sting Scream.
Sting Scream, did you say?
Not a wrestling thing, but STING.
Nah.
Sting.
No, I think that one's false.
What property do you think that is, though?
Stingray, innit?
Stingray.
Nope, not Stingray. I was actually going with Lord of the Rings on that one, and it was a filthy lie from a filthy liar. Mysterious Prime and Automutt.
That's true. It's the Scooby-Doo.
Ruh-roh, you're absolutely correct. And finally, Ecto Prime.
What was that one, sorry?
Ecto Prime. So ECTO.
Yeah, it's the Ghostbusters one. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
sure is. Well, Nate Reese, you absolutely nailed that. Well done for playing. So just before we go on, what were you going to say? You were going to say something fun.
You just talking about sort of names for ones that, again, you wouldn't think were true and things like that. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to lie, there is one of the 1990s Micromasters called a Rector. I felt that was going to maybe appear in the list. That tends to be one that a lot of people bring up as jokey things. And also, when the movie line came out in around 2007, obviously, colloquially, culturally, we might have different meanings of words than our friends over in America. So when Hasbro released at Walmart Target exclusive Decepticon Spastic, with the idea of him being a very ditzy, silly, belligerent character, they didn't realize why they couldn't release that over in the UK, and that is still quite a sought-after character if collectors feel that obliged, but that is one of those names that is something that if you've ever heard of that story, that is true.
Well, let's move on from that. Let's go back to Rector. I heard that Rector, there was a big landfill because of all the unsold toys. And did you hear what happened to him?
Go on.
Wrecked him.
Dreaders.
Yeah. Right. On that absolute bombshell of a bad joke, Mr. Nate Reese, where can we find you on socials?
So you can find me at Nate_Reese Wrestling. So that's NATE_REESE_wrestling. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok as well. I'm promoting all the matches coming like at Odyssey Pro Wrestling, Future Shock Wrestling. I've got Warrentown Wrestling as well. So 3 dates all in this month. I've also branched out a little bit recently with what's been rebranded as, I think, the Roast Battle League. So I've taken part in little local comedy roastals as well. So shout out to all the Friends Roast Battle League, which is a brand new skill I've learned a lot, and that was because of the chance to again go on a mic and do something a little bit different. But that's been a really fun experience alongside continuing with wrestling and everything else.
Great stuff. Well, there was a bit of audio issues on that, I think, so we will put those in the links as well. But yes, thank you so much for coming on today and talking all things Transformers. Feel like you're going to say something else.
Sorry, I know. Sorry, I'm just a little bit too excited. Like my one thing that I've been keeping to one side. Just
no, you go ahead, sir.
Again, we all have different things and collectibles and stuff. Literally, I think a month before the COVID lockdowns happened, I've never really done the Comic-Con thing before, but a friend of mine mentioned that Peter Cullen and Frank Welker were there, and I do have a signed print off the man himself. I got to meet him, I have a picture.
Fantastic.
Were you at the Q&A?
It was, so I think I was, yeah.
Yeah, that's where I was. There was like Q&A with both of them, and they were just talking for like 2 hours, all about their life, and yeah, it was really good.
This is what I mean. So, like, I think genuinely, I mean, I've met some incredible people in wrestling. Again, got to meet Christian, who's one of my all-time heroes, and again, like I mentioned before, some of those guest instructors. And I think if I met Rey Mysterio, I don't know what I would do, but I've genuinely never been starstruck before, fully, completely in my life, until I walked up to Peter Cullen. I couldn't even say anything, and he just clicked his fingers, did roll out in the Optimus Prime voice, and I just melted away. And it was, and again, it was funny, like, it's just one of those things, like, far more than anybody else. Possibly Arnold Schwarzenegger might be on my list as well, but and it's because of how much Optimus Prime just means to me, embedded as a character, as this sort of father figure, kind of with the voice, that character, that strength that comes with that. You know, in my other line of work outside of wrestling, somebody once described me as being very stoic because I look after a lot of young people and help with the problems. And in my head, it's like, yeah, just because I'm like Optimus Prime. But I obviously didn't dare to say anything. You know, I couldn't ruin that, like, well-articulated professional moment.
But it's how we all feel. This is why we nerd out, and because it means more than just a collection. There's feelings behind everything, and that's why I love it.
Would you say it was more than meets the eye?
Yeah, definitely would.
On that bombshell, thank you so much for appearing on Primetime Pastimes. If you would like to get involved with Primetime Pastimes and want to talk about your passions outside of wrestling, please let us know. Otherwise, have a great evening, have a great day, have a great afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. Bye.
Bye.